leaders from the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to the president of the tiny island nation of Nauru are meeting in Lima, Peru, looking for ways to tackle the impact of climate change. But it has been one surprise after the other. First, they disagreed about whether they should challenge each other's pledges for climate action under a new agreement that they are meant to commit to in Paris at the end of next year. Then, the Australian Prime Minister said his country will contribute $165 million over 4 years into a United Nations fund. Well, no one saw that coming. The details and more on this edition of S-File. Thank you for joining us. I'm Ayola Kasim. The week started with 20 Greenpeace activists from 7 different countries. Before dawn on Monday, the 8th of December, the activists set up an enormous climate change banner beside the historic Nazca lines located on a stretch of coastal desert in Peru. The Nazca lines, the most famous geoglyphs declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994, were produced over a period of 1,000 years on a 200 square mile area in the desert. They include enormous birds, monkeys and other geometric shapes.
We chose the Nazca lines because we think that these lines are a symbol for climate change. What happens here in the past, in a smaller scale, happens now in a global scale, and the Nazca culture disappeared because of climate change.
They unfurled gigantic letters that front the message, "Time for change, the future is renewable." The message was set up beside a giant hummingbird-shaped formation created by the Nazca culture that flourished from 100 BC to around 800 AD. Ancient Nazcans formed the figures by scraping away the desert's dark iron oxide pebbles to reveal the white soil underneath, which hardened as unearthed limestone was exposed to morning dew.
From here, from the Nazca lines, we're sending a strong message to political leaders that are debating in the UN Climate Conference in Lima. Our message says, time for change, the future is renewable, and with this we expect that they take action urgently to avoid the worst impacts of climate change.
The Nazca lines are striking reminders of Peru's rich pre-Columbian history and are considered one of the world's greatest archaeological enigmas, as no one knows for sure why they were drawn so large and for so long. A little while later, the People's Summit on Climate Change kicked off also on Monday. The summit comprised of members from civil society organizations, networks, social movements, and research centers, among others. Coca leaves and music figured prominently in this alternate summit, but the attendees are equally invested in serious climate change proposals and goals. The meetings, which are being held parallel to those taking place for the United Nations COP20 conference, were organized to provide an alternative forum to analyze and debate climate issues from national and international perspectives and to bring together grassroots experiences in the fight against climate change. In an effort to garner attention to the effects climate change is having on their lives and homes, some 300 indigenous representatives of Amazonian tribes also gathered on a beach in Lima to form a human banner that read, "People's Rights, Live in Forests." Dressed in their traditional garments, the tribal members hope the message that they are literally spelling out reaches the eyes and ears of participants of the COP20 climate summit taking place nearby.
Okay, here we go. To this flag.
The event organizer and artist of the banner explained the design.
We have Pachamama, which is symbolized by a tree and the face of Pachamama together. People plus the nature together. And the message is people plus rights equals living forests. And living forests are a solution to climate change.
Activists from civil society groups also protested outside a fossil fuel industry side event. The protesters denounced the presence of fossil fuel companies at the summit and called on the United Nations to ban fossil fuel lobbyists from the talks. Some activists wearing yellow shirts with the slogan, "Get the FF out," in reference to fossil fuels, entered the conference in a bid to bring attention to their cause. A representative from the Corporate Europe Observatory said multinational oil and gas companies had no place at the summit and criticized the relationship between climate policymakers and what he categorized as dirty energy industries.
We're here to deliver a message that not only do these organizations, Shell and Chevron and their other comrades, have a part to play in the climate solutions, they have no part to play in the negotiations. And we're calling for all fossil fuels to be kicked out of the COP, but also to end their relationship with national governments, because that's where most of the power lies. So we need to end the cozy relationship between climate policymakers and oil industries, coal industries, and all other dirty energy industries.
The Fossil Fuel Side event was hosted by the Global Carbon Capture and Sequestration Institute and featured speakers from the World Coal Association and Shell, among others. Some of the yellow-clad protesters were later escorted out of the conference room by police. But it was the leaders that have taken the center stage when they disagreed about whether they should challenge each other's pledges for climate change. The issue has risen to one of the leading flashpoints in Peru's capital. All countries have agreed to publish pledges for climate action, called contributions, by June next year, at least 6 months before an agreement in Paris. Creating a breathing space between submitting the pledges and the Paris Agreement was meant to increase trust and transparency. Some countries additionally now want a formal process where they can challenge others to do more.
There are two visions of this. Some countries look at these reviews as an opportunity not just to increase confidence and transparency, but actually as an opportunity to perhaps increase the ambition in the short term. And that is what has motivated those countries. On the other side, other countries are arguing that the INDC contributions that will be coming forward are already the result of very, very broad and exhaustive consultation within their own countries across the sectors, and that it would be extremely difficult for them to change those numbers, which are not numbers that are just pulled out of a hat, but rather the result of very, very exhaustive analysis and consultations.
Excellency.
China had demanded that all references to a formal review should be deleted. A new draft text for a United Nations decision published in Lima still laid out a formal review, for example, requiring that countries answer within 4 weeks questions about their climate pledges. The European Union said that such a process was vital.
In Paris, we must reach a binding and ambitious and a robust climate change agreement. And if we make the commitments on the first quarter, those countries who are prepared, or well advanced before Paris for the rest, and we don't have an evaluation, some kind of process to evaluate, we will not know whether we are ambitious enough.
The United States took a middle path, saying countries should shine some light on their plans to tackle climate change, 4 weeks after it announced its own plans to cut carbon emissions, but not have to change their plans, according to others' comments.
As far as the United States is concerned, we're perfectly happy to have an assessment process or anything else with respect to us, that is to say, with respect to our own interests. We had a concern from the beginning, and it's the reason why we proposed a period rather than a process, that we didn't want to scare countries off with a sense that too much was being asked of them in this sense. The most important part of this idea that we put forward of a consultative period is sunshine, so that you then encourage and goad countries into being ambitious, because nobody wants to look bad.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon expressed profound concern about slow action to combat climate change during the opening ceremony of high-level segment UN talks in Lima, and called on developed countries to mobilize support to meet financial targets.
We call on countries that have not yet pledged to the Green Climate Fund to consider making an ambitious financial commitment in Lima. We must also clearly define a pathway to achieving the goal of $100 billion per year by 2020 in support of developing countries. I call on developed countries to mobilize a support that will meet and exceed this target.
But it was Australia that shocked many in what has been described as another backflip when the country's Prime Minister announced that it will contribute $165 million over 4 years into the United Nations Fund to help poor nations cope with global warming. This is seen as a major policy reversal.
Ms. Julie Bishop, Foreign Minister, Australia. You have a floor, Excellency.
Co-chairs, I have been tasked by the Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott to announce today at this meeting that Australia will pledge a contribution of 200 million Australian dollars over 4 years to the Green Climate Fund.
The pledge to the Green Climate Fund is the latest in a string of stinging policy reversals for former climate change skeptic Mr. Abbott, whose struggling Conservative government has hit record low approval ratings.
Well, look, you know, I've made various comments some time ago, but as we've seen things develop over the last few months, I think it's now fair and reasonable for the government to make a modest, prudent and proportionate commitment to this climate mitigation fund. I think that's something that a sensible government does.
The policy reversal follows Mr. Abbott's decision to abandon a plan to radically reshape Australia's universal healthcare system by charging patients a fee to see their doctors. According to Mr. Abbott, the money for Australia's contribution to the fund will be allocated from its aid budget. The Green Climate Fund is a major part of a plan agreed in 2009 to raise $100 billion a year by 2020 from public and private sources to help developing nations tackle climate change. It aims to help emerging economies curb their greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to changes such as heat waves, mudslides, and rising sea levels, and is seen as vital to unlock a United Nations climate deal meant to be agreed in late 2015 in Paris.